Today in this video, we're going to go through a very simple blueprint so that you could have areas in your maps where players can walk up to and crouch down like they're hiding from an enemy. So the area I'm going to use in my map is back here, so that we'll be able to set a little trigger box so that when the first person player walks into there, the player crouches down and stops moving as if they're hiding. First, we're going to work on the visuals of that, and then we will work on the blueprinting. So we're going to do this as a blueprint. So I'm going to go to my blueprints folder, right click and choose blueprint class. And we're going to do an actor blueprint. We're going to call this one BP hide. Since this is meant to be more of a volume, it's not really an object that you want to have too many visuals with. It's going to be minimal with what we have in here. So we're going to just have a camera. So we're going to add camera. So this can be the view that the player switches to when they are hiding. We're going to need our trigger volume. So we're going to add a box collider. And the last thing that we're going to put on here is we're going to add a text object so that we know where it is, and so the player does know to press the E key in order to hide there. So let's get this set up. First, we can put the camera where about the height that we'd want it at, so it feels like they're crouching down. So maybe at about a meter high would be okay. If you want it a little bit lower than a meter, that would work as well. The text, we probably want it floating, at height so that we can easily read this. I'm going to switch the text to say E because that's the button we're going to code to press that. And let's get the trigger box a little bit bigger. So let's change those extents to maybe a 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. That will probably work pretty well. Let's get that up as well so that it's not sunk into the floor. And be aware that wherever this camera is in here is where your eyesight is going to be. So you might want to move it a little bit forward, and you can always adjust this later. Same thing with the E. But I want to place this in the scene real quick so we can kind of talk a little bit about it, because there's one small change I do want to make visually to this, and to show you how to do that. So let's compile and save it. And let's put it in the scene. So I set this up so there's a little hidey hole back here. So I'm going to drag it into my scene. We do want to position this so that the camera, again, is facing the way that we would want the viewer to, the player to be crouching, probably not facing the wall. So we will rotate this one so it faces this way. So as is, this is probably okay, this E up here, but what if it wasn't this corner? What if it was like over here and it was rotated? It's very hard to see that E because it is kind of statically positioned. So it would be nice to change that so it's billboarding with the camera. And we're going to do that real quick. We're going to create a quick text material that's set to billboard so that no matter where we're facing, that E will always be facing towards the camera. The easiest way to do this is going to be to duplicate the current text material and then make alterations to it. So we can easily find that text material. It can be a little bit hard to find sometimes by going back to our blueprint we're making and find that text object and come over here and see what it's using, the default. And then we can click on the folder icon with a magnifying glass and it'll take us to where that is in our content browser because it's buried kind of in our engine content, which is right here. So I'm just going to select it, hit Control C to copy that. And I'm going to go back to my blueprints and hit Control V to paste in a copy of that. I don't want to forget which one is which, so I am going to rename this one to be billboard text. And I'm also going to go ahead, so I can watch it change, I'm going to go ahead and replace it in my blueprint so that when it updates, let's compile and save that, I can see it working in real time. So let's double click on that material and let's change this. So we don't want to mess with any of this stuff. Maybe just move it out of the way, because what we're going to be changing is how the world position offset works. So we're going to right click and search for align mesh to the camera. And we're going to hook up this world position offset, this one, into world position offset. We do have to make a few more changes, because if we save this, we can see it's not, it's not quite right yet. What we need to do is we need to go in and select that text object in our blueprint. This text renderer. And over here under the transform of that text renderer object, we just have to change that rotation to world instead of relative. And it's getting a little bit closer. So we have it a little bit closer to what we need it to be. There's a few other changes we do need to do in order to get the correct way, but this is a little bit closer to what we want. We just need to get it rotated to the right now. To do that, in our billboard text material, we are going to make first a vector 3 object. So I'm going to hold 3 and left mouse click. And we are going to make this a 1, 0, 0. We're not really concerned about the color. We're using it with the numbers here. And we're going to hook this into this custom object basis 2. We're then going to make 2 constant 1. So I'm going to hold the 1 button and click twice. This first one's going to stay at 0. The second one we're going to change to a -1. We're then going to we're going to right click and we're going to search for a make float 3. And the order that we're going to hook this in is the first float is going to be a 0. The second float is going to be a -1. And then the third float is going to be a 0. This then gets hooked into our custom object basis 3. I'm going to save that. And now we can see that our E is oriented correctly. And it follows us. So we could use this anywhere that you wanted to do billboard text in your game. So it'll be a little bit easier for players to see. Okay, our visuals are done. Let's move on to actually blueprinting the action happening. So I'm going to go back to our BP hide, our blueprint that we're making to do this. And we're going to do this with an on begin overlap and an on end overlap, because we want to make sure that when we leave the box collider that we're no longer able to accidentally hide. So we do need to make sure that we're going to turn on and off our ability to do that. So I'm over in the event graph. I'm going to make sure the box is selected. I'm going to scroll all the way down and I'm going to choose an on component begin overlap. And while I'm here, I might as well also set up the on component end overlap since they're very similar. I'm just going to do them at the same time. So what we do want to make sure that we are triggering this with our character. So let's pull off of here and we're going to search for cast to BP underscore, and I'm using the first person. If you're not using first person, you'd obviously have to find the correct one, but I'm using the first person character, so I'm going to choose that. And we're going to make sure that that is the same. What we're going to do is we're going to enable an input so we can listen for that E button press. So we're going to do enable input. Whose input are we enabling? We need to get the player's controller. So we're listening to the player's controller for that. So we're going to search for get player controller. So that's all that trigger box is going to do, is we're going to make sure it's the first person player. If it is, we're going to start listening to button presses. When we're done, we just kind of want to do the opposite. We want to make sure that we are turning it off. So let's cast to BP underscore first person character again, just to double check that it is the player that is ending the overlap. And rather than enable input, we're going to disable the input. Of that player controller. So now we are ready to code in with the blueprints what happens when we press that E key. So I'm going to make a little space up here. We actually don't need any of these for those, so I'm just going to actually delete those. We're going to search for well, we can just press, let's see, what's the easiest way to find this one? We can just search for key, and we're looking for the E keyboard event. So we just want this one. We do want to be able to go into it, press the E key, and it allows us to hide. And then when we want to get out, we're going to press E again to get out of it. So in order to do that, we're going to do a flip-flop so that whichever one we're not in is going to do the opposite of it. So the first one would be to hide, and then the second one would be to unhide. And then if we press it again, we would hide and then unhide, etc., etc. So to do this, what we're going to do is we want the camera view to change to that camera that we have set here. So we're going to pull off A, and we're going to do a set view target with blend. Am I typing that wrong? Let's see. From a set view. Target. Oh, I see. It's being weird about having context sensitive turned on. Let's turn that off. Set view target with blend. This is what we're looking for. So if it's not coming up, make sure this is unchecked. We are going to hook this into here so that if we're doing A, it's going to trigger this. The target is going to be the player controller. So we need to get player controller. That's who's changing. What's the new target? It's going to be the camera here. So the new target is going to be the self, because it's going to be this thing. Let's try context sensitive. Get reference to self. There it is. So if it's not coming up, make sure context sensitive is on. Just type self. Get a reference to self. And this will change it. Let's make some room. So that it's switching to the camera in here. So we're going to get it switched. next, we need to make sure that we're not moving around while we're hiding. So let's make sure that we are disabling our input. I'm sorry, disable input's not quite the right word. We want to disable the movement because we still want to be able to input that E. So we're going to search for disable movement. Turn that context sensitive off. Disable movement. Who's being disabled? The player character is. So we got to get that player character. Because that's who's disabled. We need to set up what happens opposite now. So when we're done, we need to set the view back to the regular camera and we want to enable the input. We're getting a little crowded. Let's move this up a little bit. Since it's going to be almost the same node, or the same node with things different moved around, we can just Control C, Control V to copy that node rather than finding it again. We're going to put that into the B. The target is going to be that player controller again, because that's who's changing. The new target, though, is going to be the player character, because we're changing it back from the self. So we're going to search for get player character. So that it switches back to the camera that is associated with that. We then want to make sure we are enabling our movement. So off of here, we're going to pull off and search for set movement mode. The movement mode that we're setting to is going to be from that player character. That's who's changing. And we can just reuse that one. The movement mode that we're choosing is walking. So don't forget to set that one. And we should be all set. Let's compile it. We're good to go. If you find you're having errors, make sure that you're not trying to combine some of these together into like singular, like you only have ones. That can sometimes cause some problems. So make sure that you're not like using this for all of them or accidentally get these mixed up. We'll save this one and we'll test it out. So we're going to play and oh, nice. I can see my little E floating. I know that's a little safe spot. So I'm going to go over here and hit E. Oh, but notice this. Do you see something? We can still see our first person body. So we're going to have to actually turn that off as well. But let's hit E and we get back into our body. And, you know, the hiding is working. It's just this one last little step of making sure we're hiding ourselves. So let's fix that real quick. Let's go to our blueprint. And we're going to do this off of the disable movement. Right off of here. So what we need to do is first we need to get to that first person player. So we're going to pull off of here. And we're going to cast to BP underscore first person character. We're going to make sure we're getting the player character because we want to make sure we're turning off the right thing. I'm having a hard time typing today. So we're going to get the player character. That's who we're looking at. And we are going to pull off of here. This one down here. Actually, let's do it this way. I'm going to right click. I'm going to search for set visibility. and we're going to hook this into here. And we're going to pull off of here as BP first person character. And what we're going to search for is, let's see, context sensitive. Sometimes this can be really hard to find. Give me one moment. Okay, it's pull off of here as BP first person character. Make sure context sensitive is turned on, and we're going to search for mesh. And it's this get mesh, because this is going to get the mesh of the first person character object, and that's what we're going to turn off. Oop, let's go into, hold on, it's not quite the right one. Oh, I see the problem. You maybe watching this, you realized what I was doing as I was doing it. I grabbed the wrong set visibility. Do you see how it says target is widget? We don't want that one. We need to set visibility. And we're going to do the box. We're going to delete that and hook this mesh into there. So it has to say target is scene component. There we go. For this one though, we are going to make sure new visibility is unchecked because we don't want it to be visible. So it's going to make sure that this is invisible. We do have to remember to repeat it down here or we will be invisible. But the good news is we can select all this stuff, hit Control C, Control V, hook this into here. And then all we need to do is check that box and we should be good to go. Because this is going to make it then visible again once we're getting out of that. So let's compile and save. And let's try it out. Let's get over to here, hit E, and we no longer see our body. And then when we come back out, you can see we still have a shadow, so we are still physically there now. So that's the whole thing. It's just a very simple way to kind of control like hiding, and then we can get out of it. You could elaborate more on this, like you could figure out how to make it so while you can't move around, maybe you can do your look. Maybe you can do it even more where you do add some mesh to it, so like you're hiding in like a locker or like a box or something, and it closes. But this is just kind of like the very first simple blueprint of how you can control your character temporarily by changing the camera and disabling its inputs.